Need help with love, sex, dating, or relationship issues? Help from Frank Kermit, the best-selling author and Canada's most international relationship coach, is only a click away at franktalks.com.
You're listening to the Howie Silbiger Show on the True Talk Radio Network. Connect with Howie by phone 514-738-4100 extension 200, by email howie@truetalkradio.com, or by Twitter, Howie Silbiger.
You're listening to the Howie Silbiger Show here on Radio Shalom 1650 AM. My name is Frank because I have to be filling in for Howie Silbiger. Today I'm interviewing Howie Silbiger. How you doing, Howie?
That would be why you're filling in for me, right?
Exactly. Yeah. This is your show, but you've asked me to step in as a guest host so I could interview you and present a different side of Howie Silbiger to your audience.
This is the first time I'm being interviewed, not about a specific topic. Mm-hmm. So I have no idea. Like full disclosure, I didn't give Frank any guidelines at all about what to ask me. I told him anything he wants to ask me, he could ask me. And there's no limits to this interview. And of course, we're going to take your calls at 514-738-4100 extension 200. If you have any questions, you want to talk to me, you want to learn a little more about Howie Silbiger, you could call in, and we'll be more than happy. And we're going to change the rules for this hour. So if you called earlier in the show, if you're one of the callers between the 6 and 7 o'clock hour, you could call back again. All
right, Howie, let's start with the very first question. What city were you born in? And tell us a little bit about why you got into radio.
I was born here in Montreal and grew up here in Montreal. I spent most of my life here. I got into radio. I had radio in my blood since I'm a little kid. I've always wanted to be in radio. I was 10 years old when I first realized that talk radio is what I wanted to do. I was never interested in DJing. It was always about talk. I was 11, 12 years old. I had a little transistor radio under my pillow listening to the likes of Peter Anthony Holder, who, by the way, now airs his show on truetalkradio.com. And talk radio is always what I really wanted to do. So I've made it my goal to be a talk radio show host, to be a journalist. It's always been my ambition. So.
And what do you do day to day as a radio journalist?
Well, we have the blog, the truetalkradio.com. I post a lot up on the blog. Every day there's new articles, there's new stories that we're covering. As a radio journalist, I used to have a daily show here on Radio Shalom, but unfortunately finances didn't allow for it. So my daily show became my 3-time-a-week show, which then became a 1-time-a-week show because people aren't sponsoring it. I don't know if it's a general thing at the station or it's just a show. I don't know, but couldn't get enough sponsors, so the show's only on once a week. So on a daily basis, I work on truetalkradio.com. If you want to read the stuff that we're following, and we do a lot of news stories on there, and we follow up some of the stories here on the radio show. So the website's actually a companion to the radio show.
All right, let's get a little bit down to the nitty-gritty here. A number of the topics that you discuss, both on the radio show, True Talk Radio website, always has a very Jewish-centric theme. But at the same time, sometimes the things that you cover might almost present you as someone who doesn't appreciate the Jewish community. You've even been called a self-hating Jew. How do you respond to that?
I'm pretty selfless when it comes to promoting Judaism. I wear it on my sleeve. I'm pretty vocal about my belief that Jewish institutions, Jewish organizations, the Jewish community has to remain Jewish. A lot of people see that as a challenge because as time progresses, as we move forward, I'm finding at least as I get older, that I don't know if I'm getting more cynical or the community is getting less Jewish, but either way, I'm finding that our organized Jewish community is becoming less and less traditional. And I feel that since I have the medium, I have the radio show, and I have the website, and the website gets a tremendous amount of hits a week, and the radio show has a tremendous amount of listeners. So since I have the audience, and I built the audience over years and years and years of doing radio, and the website's been around for quite a few years, since I have the audience, I felt that I was in no better position than anyone else to promote Judaism, to promote Jewish pride, and to promote the continuity of our Jewish community. Now, that's a challenge to a lot of people who feel that assimilation is the way to go, that we must assimilate into society, that Jews are too different, and that Jews have to be the same as everyone else. So the people who challenge me, the people who call me an anti-Semite, the people who call me a Jew hater, the people who say I'm destroying the Jewish community by doing shows like I'm doing here, when I point out the moral flaws of our Jewish community, and I say if we don't talk about our moral flaws, if we don't talk about our problems, we can never solve our problems. We have to admit that there's a problem before we could look for a solution to the problem. So when I talk about the issues that are tough for the Jewish community, I understand that it rubs some people the wrong way. And by rubbing some people the wrong way, the way they react is they can't fight me on the facts, because the facts of the matter are that 50% of all marriages in the Jewish community, over 50%, are intermarried. The fact is that our Jewish community as a whole is assimilating into society, and that we've wholesale given up on Jewish culture and on Jewish tradition when it comes to our institutions and when it comes to our mainstream Jewish community. The truth is that synagogue attendance is down in the Ashkenazi community, not so much in the Sephardi community, but in the Ashkenazi community, synagogue attendance is down. The truth is that Jewish education is taking a hit, and we take a look at our schools. Our Jewish schools are a mess, and the majority of Jewish kids living in our city aren't even going to Jewish schools anymore because they're such a mess. So when we take a look at all the factors, if I don't talk about them, and the community's not talking about them because the community's kind of embarrassed that they've let their guard down, and this is what the community's come to. So if nobody's talking about it, then nobody's working towards making it better. The only way we can make it better is a free exchange of information, a free so that we're all on the same page and we all understand where we are at this point in our Jewish history, at this point in our Jewish life in the city. And if we all understand, if the entire community understands where we are, we could make a decision, an informed decision as a community, on whether we want to continue going down the path of assimilation, or we want to pull back a little bit and say, okay, let's take the reins of our community back into our hands, and let's take a look and see what we could do to inject Judaism back into our Jewish community. As a community, if we don't understand where we are, and if we don't have shows like my show that inform people where we've gone and how far we've fallen, then there's no way we could pull ourselves back up. And so I think a show like this is extremely important. And if I wasn't doing the show and there was somebody else doing the show, I would be listening to the show.
But don't you think that sometimes you go too far?
What do you mean by too far?
Well, let's look at it from another angle. The fact is that in this process, you've made a number of enemies.
I learned a long time ago that when you tell the truth and you're bluntly honest about everything, that people are not going to like you. It's as simple as that. I don't sugarcoat anything. I am extremely, extremely vocal about saying we don't have to use language, we don't have to use vernacular that is going to soften the message. I hate it, and it's really a big pet peeve of mine when you call a child molester a pedophile. And the reason I hate it is because pedophile sounds like some kind of party game, where a child molester says, this is a child rapist. You're a rapist. You raped a child. You're a pedophile. Right? Calling him a pedophile takes away from the fact that he's a child rapist. Takes away from the fact that you're a child molester. I like using harsher language because harsher language gets the point across.
The problem is that when you use harsher language, you also inadvertently sometimes turn people off. And sometimes they may see you as a symbol of what's wrong with the very community that you're claiming to try and help.
That is very true. That is extremely true. But when they realize that what you're speaking is the truth, and when they realize that everything you've said has happened, and everything that you've pointed to has happened, then suddenly they have a different perspective on the kind of work that I do, that people like me do. I'm not the only one. There are other people like me.
But don't you think that in the process of the way you do things, although your intent is noble, the way you do things actually turns people who would be supporters of you against you?
At the end of the day, I host a radio show. My job is to get ears to listen to the show. That's what I'm here for. Everyone has the option. You could turn the radio off. You could change the channel. You could walk away. Nobody's forced to listen to the station. People who listen to my show know that this is the message I'm putting across. I don't hide it. I'm not the kind of guy who's going to say today one thing and tomorrow I'm going to be a hypocrite and say something else. I am very focused on my message on this show, and everyone knows what my message is, and my agenda is on my sleeve. Everyone knows what the agenda is on the show. I don't tailor stories to fit the agenda. I just use real stories that kind of strengthen my agenda on the show. My agenda on the show is, and I'll state it right now, my agenda on the show is to promote Jewish pride, Jewish continuity, and Judaism. Period. That's my agenda on the show.
Howard Silbiger, is he first and foremost a Jew or first and foremost a radio journalist?
Both.
If you had to pick one that's the priority, which is it?
They're kind of intertwined. I'm a Jewish radio journalist.
Okay. And if you had to pick one, that you had to be the self-defining factor?
I'm a Jew.
Okay.
Jew comes before anything. I'm a Jewish Canadian.
Now let's look at everything that you've done.
Yeah.
As a Jew in Canada with the medium of radio and everything that you've done and accomplished.
Okay, there's multiple years, so multiple decades, so you're going to have to choose what decade you want to talk about, because we could talk about this for 3 hours.
All right.
Yeah.
One question. Your biggest regret?
That's a question. My biggest regret. All right. I would have to say my biggest regret and my biggest failing when it came to my Jewish activism in the city was my organization Save All Jews Everywhere. That was my biggest regret. In 91, no, it was 99. I started an organization called Save All Jews Everywhere with another guy, and he took off to Israel. He made Aliyah. He immigrated to Israel, and I continued with the organization. And you're a kid, and you're really not that experienced in running Jewish organizations. And I let myself get intimidated by the mainstream organizations. They intimidated me out of business. They ganged up on me. B'nai B'rith, Canadian Jewish Congress, ganged up on us. There were a bunch of us who were part of this organization. They ganged up on us, and eventually we closed the organization due to the pressure from the community. If I knew then what I know today, and basically stand up to a bully, and the bully backs down. If I knew that then, I didn't know that. I didn't have that life lesson then. And so you learn from your mistakes and you move on. So that was my biggest regret, is that I didn't continue with Save All Jews Everywhere, that we didn't push forward and didn't persevere even after the threats and the CSIS investigation and all the RCMP investigations and everything else that happened to us, that we didn't continue with that organization. That's probably my biggest regret in my activism.
Who were the people that you define as a bully in that situation? Who were the people who tried to stop you?
It was the Jewish organizations. It was quite clearly B'nai B'rith and Canadian Jewish Congress at the time.
Why would Jewish organizations try to interfere with your efforts to help the Jewish community unless you might have done something that made them feel uncomfortable?
Traditionally, the Jewish organizations didn't do protests, and they weren't very vocal when it came to issues that concerned Jews. They were vocal to a certain extent, but they didn't protest, and the protests that they had were done inside Jewish institutions. So if they had a big protest, it would be done inside a synagogue or it would be done inside an institution. What we did was we took the protest to the street, and we started shouting in the streets, and that rubbed them the wrong way. They just didn't like the fact that we were vocal, we were getting press, and we were challenging their authority as the official Jewish community. So they really weren't very happy with the fact that here were a bunch of students, and we were seen as like little bratty kids that were standing out in the street and stealing their thunder. We beat them to announcing synagogue desecrations. At the time, there was a spat of synagogue desecrations. We were on CJD leading off the news before they even knew that these synagogue desecrations happened. We beat them on almost everything, because don't forget, I've been a journalist for a long time. I was a journalist when I was 14 years old. I started working in journalism. So my journalistic skills were honed. So here I was, 19. I was already a journalist for 5 years. I had all sorts of contacts. I had all sorts of connections. And I got all sorts of information before trickled down to the mainstream Jewish community. Nobody knew about some of the stuff that. I remember one specific example was somebody called me and told me, "Did you see the swastika painted on the synagogue's door?" I said, "Is a swastika painted on the synagogue's door?" He says, "Yeah." And I said, "Which synagogue?" And he gave me the synagogue, gave me the address. Immediately I called CJD's newsroom and I said, "All right, I'd like to comment on the swastika on the synagogue's door on the street." The police hadn't even been informed yet that there was a swastika on the synagogue's door. So they took my comment, they started airing the story, they sent a reporter out and they started airing the story before the police even knew that there was a swastika on the door. So because we were so quick on the response, I think the community was a little upset and a little scared of us.
I got to ask you something. Now, you've been involved as a radio journalist for how many years now?
23-ish.
Do you think that being Jewish is part of the reason that you haven't fully succeeded as a radio journalist?
I think I'm very successful as a radio journalist. Maybe not financially, but I think as a journalist I'm extremely successful. I hosted a show on CJD. Multiple shows on CJD. I worked for Standard and Astral Media for 10 years, over 10 years, both as a journalist and as a technician. I think I've been very successful in the actual journalism aspect of radio journalism, not the financial aspect. Money, I haven't made very much money doing radio.
But don't you think that the fact that you can't find sponsors for your radio show now might be an indication that...
I'm not actively searching for sponsors. I have nobody going out and asking people to sponsor the show. I don't have the physical time to do it myself, and I haven't hired anyone to go and do it. So, not having sponsors on the show is not indicative of the listenership of the show, because I know there are thousands and thousands of people listening to the show, and it's not indicative of the readership on the website, because I see the statistics on the website. I know how many people are reading the website. So, when I know what my audience is, and I know I have an audience, and I know my audience is huge. Just because I'm not making money with the show doesn't mean that the show's not a successful show. I don't judge success based on income. That's not what success is to me. What success is to me is that I could get on here and I could talk about the Gospel Jubilation Choir being at the Shar Zion Synagogue tomorrow night, and I could get 15 calls in an hour of people who are upset about it and wouldn't have known that this was happening unless they listened to it on this show. That to me is successful. If one person on this show gets upset because our Jewish community is giving up on Judaism and giving up on Jewish continuity and giving up on Jewish identity, if one person listening to the show gets upset, that to me is a successful show. It makes me a success here.
At what point do you draw a line in your efforts to help the Jewish community? At what point is there a line where you say, I will not cross that line for ethical or moral reasons?
Well, we are, of course, bound by laws. There are laws that govern what we can and cannot say on the air, on the radio, and stuff that we can and cannot write on the blog. I'm not here to destroy. My job isn't to destroy. My job isn't to condemn or to judge. That's God's job. My job is to inform. There's always a slant. Every media has a slant. My slant is, and I'm open about it, my slant is a pro-Jewish slant and a pro-religion slant, and everyone knows it, and that's why some people get angry and they call and they yell at me when I push the envelope a little bit. They call and they yell at me, and I'm fine with that because it's expected. The line, I would never slander anybody on the air. I would never libel anybody on the air because I feel that's wrong. I would never call somebody to task over something that they're not responsible for. I try not to embarrass too many people. I mean, it happens because you cover news stories, and news stories are sometimes embarrassing. I try to follow the rules of dignity. That's really what I try to do. I bring young kids onto the show. I treat them with the utmost respect. I mean, we fight, we jostle each other, we insult each other. But at the end of the day, I think we all respect each other.
But you do push the envelope, and that's something you're known for.
I've been pushing the envelope since I'm a kid.
And at what point do you push the envelope but not cross that line? That's what I'm trying to figure out here, because in pushing the envelope, it might be that tactic that has actually turned a lot of people against you.
Well, if you know that there's a line, and it's a clear line, then you know how far you can push the envelope. And that's where professionalism comes into it. That's where experience comes into it, and that's where your journalistic ethics comes into it. So I could get a story saying that that this guy's a thief, right? And somebody will call me and they'll send me documentation saying that this person in the community is a thief. And I'll take a look at the story, and if the documentation is accurate, I could go with the story. But if the documentation is incomplete, and I can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt in my head that this person's a thief, then I can't go with the story. And that's the way I work in general. If I'm not comfortable with any aspect of any story that I'm covering, or any story that I'm going to write, I'm not going to write the story. I'm not going to publish the story. I source very well, and I back up not almost everything. I back up everything I say with sources and with documentation. If I can't back it up with sources and documentation, I don't even want to hear it. I'm not interested. I won't do the story. Period. And there's been plenty of stories that I passed over that the Gazette has picked up or some of the other media has picked up that I refuse to do because I didn't have complete information. I absolutely refuse to do stories without complete information. I'm Howie Silbiger. This is the Howie Silbiger Show here on 1650 AM CJRS Radio, Charles, Montreal. I am being interviewed by Frank Kermit. He's interviewing me. And, of course, you could call in and ask any questions you want of me, too. The number to call, 514-738-4100, extension 200.
Need help with love, sex, dating, or relationship issues? Help from Frank Kermit, the best-selling author and Canada's most international relationship coach, is only a click away at franktalks.com.
And we continue with the interview.
Howie, do you feel that being Jewish has gotten in the way of your career?
I think being Jewish has gotten in the way of me getting a full-time job in commercial radio, especially in the newsroom. Gord Sinclair, about 10 years ago or 11 years ago, told me that if aliens landed on Friday night and I needed all hands on deck, would you come out and cover the story on a Sunday night? And I said, on a Friday night. I said, absolutely not. I'm an Orthodox Jew, and Friday night's my Sabbath, and I don't care if Mars lands on Jupiter. I'm not coming out to cover any story on a Friday night. I don't work on my Sabbath. He says, then I can't hire you to work in the newsroom. Now, that might have been a discrimination case that I probably could have taken to the Human Rights Council, which I chose not to. But that's general attitude of newsroom directors, is that they want their people to be available all the time, and I'm not available all the time. So did it get in the way? No. It's a conscious choice I make. I wake up every morning and I choose to be an Orthodox Jew. I could choose not to be an Orthodox Jew every morning, but every morning I wake up and I choose to be an Orthodox Jew. It's a conscious choice I make in my life. And being a conscious choice I make in my life, I have no regrets. So if the career that I wanted to pursue and the commercial career that I wanted to have, with the monetary benefits of that career, didn't come because I made the conscious choice to follow God's law, then that's a conscious choice I made, and I have no regrets over it whatsoever. None.
I can totally understand you not having regrets. You've made a choice in life to follow your path. But with that said, I also work as a relationship coach, and I know that when people follow through on their sense of duty, morals, obligation, they may not have regrets, but they can always have a sense of resentment, and that resentment can build over time. So my question to you is, do you think you have any resentment to your obligations in being an observant Jew?
Absolutely not. No resentment whatsoever. I'm the kind of guy who I'm the kind of guy who, when I make a decision, I stick by my decisions. I'm very happy. I'm very comfortable with the decisions I make. I think about them for a long time before I make them. And I'm very, very comfortable with the decisions I make. I'm very happy with the way my life is running. And I really have no resentment whatsoever about Judaism, about radio, about anything. I don't resent anything. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We move on.
Don't you think, though, that could be an argument, given that you sometimes push the envelope, you sometimes rub people the wrong way, your intent is to help the Jewish community, but at the same time, being an observant Jew has, in fact, cost you certain opportunities, things that you've been wanting to do your entire life? Don't you think there might be a correlation with an underlying resentment towards the Jewish community at the same time wanting to help them?
It hasn't cost me any opportunities. I worked for Standard Radio, then Astro Communications for 11 years. I did pretty much every position in radio that you could possibly do. For everything from production to hosting shows to producing shows to working in the production studios to working in the newsroom. I've done everything. So it hasn't held me back one bit.
What about in your friendships?
What about my friendships?
Okay, you will not attend the wedding of a friend who is marrying someone who is not Jewish. And that'll cost you some friendships.
In life, you make choices, and when you have, and when you decide to live by a moral code, that moral code runs your life. And when somebody violates that moral code, or when something in your life violates that moral code, or some element of your life violates that moral code, you have to make a decision. Do you stand by your moral code, or do you become a hypocrite by saying, "All right, I'm living by a certain moral code, but I'm going to put a blinder on and say, no, I'm not going to look at that moral code because this is a friend." In life, we make choices. We choose who our friends are. We choose who we want to associate with. I don't want to associate with people who don't have the same moral code that I have. I don't want to associate with people who aren't moral people, or who feel that my moral code is racist, or whatever they want to describe it as, right? I make a choice to associate with them or not to associate with them. When my friend marries a non-Jewish girl and they start having children, and those children are not going to be Jewish, that cuts the continuity of the Jewish community. That destroys the continuity of the Jewish community. And when somebody is directly responsible for destroying the continuity of my community, of my people, my nation, and I live by a moral code, and I get on here every week and I preach on here on my show. I hate to use the word preach, but I get on the show and I talk about continuity, and I complain that we're giving up on Judaism, and that we're giving up on our morals, and we're giving up on our Jewish pride and our Jewish identity. And then I attend a wedding of a person who's marrying a non-Jewish person who's going to give up on their identity. That would make me a hypocrite.
But you would attend,
and I'm not a hypocrite.
But you would attend the wedding of a friend of yours or a colleague of yours where both of them are not Jewish.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, because then there is absolutely zero danger of continuity of Jewish people, because Jewish people aren't involved in that wedding. So I have no problem going to a wedding of two non-Jews or two Jews. But when a non-Jew marries a Jew, you're cutting the bloodline, you're cutting the tribe line. And once you cut the tribal connection, then I really have no choice but to cut you off. Simple as that. I know it sounds harsh.
It is, yeah, it does sound harsh. I'm trying to understand, though, that you would attend the wedding of two people who are not Jewish. You would not attend the wedding of a friend of yours who is Jewish, who is marrying someone who's not Jewish.
Yes.
But at the same time, I mean, I've listened to your show. You once did a show about homosexuality within the Jewish community, and how, I think it was the Jewish Press, who had written a very eloquently written article about how you shouldn't be violent to these people. You should still embrace them as Jews. You agreed with that article.
Yes.
How can you be okay with embracing a Jew who is a homosexual, but not be okay with embracing a Jewish friend who has found love with someone and marrying and wants to start a family? Because Jewish values, a lot of those Jewish values are family values.
Yes. All right, so let me explain it to you. The Jewish Press article, first of all, didn't say we have to embrace the guy as a Jew. What Jewish Press article said was that we can't harass the guy and drive the guy to the point of suicide. That's what the Jewish Press article said. Said that while homosexuality is condemned in Judaism, it's clear in the Torah that homosexuality is an abomination. Torah is very, very clear on it. The Jewish Press article was saying that just because the person is committing an abomination, just because the person is sinning in front of God, doesn't mean that we have to go and harangue the person until the person gets so depressed that he has to commit suicide. No one says that we have to go and judge the person, and we have to go and we have to harass the person so that the person gets so depressed that they want to jump off a building. Okay? That's what the Jewish Press article was talking about. Because it was responding to an article that was written the week before in the Jewish Press of a guy who said that he was a Hasidic guy who was gay, and that somebody in his community found that he was gay, and the whole community came and they ganged up on him. They were bullying him, and he got to a point where he was going to commit suicide. And the editor of the Jewish Press talked him out of committing suicide because he called the newspaper and said that he was going and this is why he was going. And the editor of the Jewish Press talked him out of it and talked him into writing an op-ed piece about it. So they were responding to the op-ed piece. They were responding to criticism that they ran the op-ed piece by saying, yes, while we condemn the act of homosexuality, at the same time, we're not obligated to go and force these people to kill themselves, right? We could just leave them live their lives and leave them alone. We don't have to embrace them in our Jewish culture. We don't have to embrace them into our Jewish families. We don't have to invite them for Shabbat. But at the same time, we don't have to have them kill themselves. We don't have to drive them crazy. We have to treat them like humans, because there are laws saying that we have to treat people like human. But that attitude, and I agree with that attitude, that you could ignore them, you don't have to be part of them, they don't have to be part of you, you don't have to have anything to do with them. You choose who you associate with, so you could choose not to associate with these people. That I could agree with. That everyone makes a conscious choice on who they associate with, right? That's also a much different scenario than somebody who's marrying a non-Jewish girl. Judaism passed through the mother, the lineage is through the mother. So a boy marrying a non-Jewish girl, right, where the lineage passes through the mother and they have children, the next generation of children will not be Jewish.
What about the other way around?
That kills Judaism. The other way around is also an issue. The issue is the clash of cultures. When it comes to a Jewish girl and a non-Jewish boy, it's the clash of cultures and which religion wins out. And I would hate to be a kid who grows up in a family of two religions and at 13 years old has to decide, do I want to be mommy's religion or daddy's religion? I would hate to be that kid. That would be torturous for a kid. That's torturous for a kid. And to make that kind of decision at 13, or because, do you have a bar mitzvah, do you have a confirmation, right? Where are you going? To make that decision as a kid, do I choose mommy or do I choose daddy? I would never want to be in that situation. And that, once again, weakens the Jewish people. Simple as that. It just weakens us. It just kills us. It kills the Jewish people. And killing the next generation of Jews is not something I could condone.
Let's change the direction of this interview.
Yeah.
I want to talk about...
actually, we have to take a little break. Frank said you could call in and you could ask me questions too. If you want to challenge anything I said, give me a call. 514-738-4100 extension 200. That's 514-738-4100 extension 200. I'm Howie Silbiger. He is Frank Kermit. He's interviewing me for the next half hour or so, and we want to learn a little bit more about me. But you could call in and ask your questions too. 514-738-4100 extension 200.
If you need help with your relationships, well, my buddy Frank here has got some tips. Just go to franktalks.com. His advice is better than your mom's, 'cause he knows what you are going through. Frank has been there too, so log on to franktalks.com, to franktalks.com.
You're listening to the Howie Silbiger Show on the True Talk Radio Network. Connect with Howie by phone 514-738-4100 extension 200. By email howie@truetalkradio.com or by Twitter Howie Silbiger.
You're listening to the Howie Silbiger Show here on Radio Shalom 1650 AM. I am Frank because I have to be sitting in as a guest host, and we are interviewing Howie Silbiger on his own show. Welcome back, Howie.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you invited me here tonight. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I kind of felt, that I had to invite you here.
Just because my name's in the show doesn't mean that I have to be here.
Well, I would have preferred, keeping you outside of the studio and doing the show all by myself, but I didn't think it would be as much fun.
Probably not, no.
All right.
We're, of course, taking your calls. Number to call, 514-738-4100, extension 200.
And during the commercial break, we actually had someone send in a text with a question for you. So why don't we just take that text right away?
All right. How does your family feel about some of the reporting you do in the Jewish community? Well, like every Jewish mother, they worry. Sometimes I take on big stories. And when I take on the big stories, when I take on the schools and I take on the organized Jewish community, they get a little worried. How's it going to affect me? How's it going to affect my livelihood? How's it going to affect my standing in the community? I personally don't care. I'm doing the stories because I feel the stories have to be done. I don't look at the beginning of the story and say, what are the repercussions at the end of the story? I look at the beginning of the story and say, this story has to be done, and I just do the story. And whatever happens, happens. That's the way it is.
Let's talk about your personal life. Since we've covered your career and your Jewish activism, let's talk about your personal life. Anybody special?
No.
That's it?
I'm not married. I have no kids.
Don't you find it a little ironic that someone who chose not to be married, not to have children, is so involved in the family lives of others?
I didn't choose not to be married and how to have children. I haven't run into the right woman yet. I still plan to get married and maybe have children. I know I'm getting a little old, but it's going to happen eventually.
I'm assuming it's a Jewish girl?
Yeah, it will have to be. But I haven't met the right girl yet. So when I meet the right girl, then I'll be married and I'll hopefully have a few children.
All right. Why don't we find out what you're looking for?
Girl.
Can you elaborate, other than the fact that she's born female?
She has to be born female, she has to be born Jewish, and she has to be intelligent. I can't deal with airheads.
So that's basically it. She has to be born female, born Jewish, and intelligent.
I have to get along with her.
Well, you struggle to get along with most people. Don't you think that's asking a bit too much at this point?
Maybe.
No, seriously, what are some of the criteria and qualities you're looking for?
I don't know. It depends on who the girl is. It depends on the conversation we have. It depends on a lot of things. It's a hard question to answer because I don't have a specific criteria.
Well, if you did have some criteria, some idea, I told
you. The basics are she has to be female. She has to be Jewish. Like both parents Jewish, and she has to be intelligent. Those are my three basic things. After that, everything else is negotiable.
Okay, so if you're a Jewish girl and you're born female, you were born a Jew, and you didn't, what's the word? You didn't convert to Judaism.
Yeah.
And you're interested in getting to know Howie and getting along with Howie. Why don't you give us a call? Maybe we can set you up and find Howie his soulmate.
Yeah, and that's. I'm not here to matchmake on my show. That's not what the purpose of the show is.
So the question I have is that since at this age, why does she have to be born a Jew? Why wouldn't you be willing to date converts?
I'm a Kohen, which is a high priest in the Jewish religion, and part of the rules of being a priest means I cannot date divorcees, or I can't marry divorcees or converts. That's part of my religious heritage.
Is it possible that part of your resentment and anger towards Jews who marry non-Jews is because since you've chosen the route for yourself that you will not marry someone who's not Jewish, and therefore now you haven't met the right person, you're alone, any possibility that there could be some negative emotions behind that decision?
Absolutely not. My resentment, as you call it, I don't find it resentment. My problem with people marrying non-Jews is, as I said before, and I'll repeat it again in case you didn't hear me, the problem I have with people marrying non-Jews is the fact that they are breaking the Jewish bloodline. We are a tribe, we are a nation. It is dictated in our Torah that the line goes in a certain level, line goes in a certain line, right? And the second you break that line, then the next generation is not Jewish. So the more people who intermarry and the more children who are growing up as non-Jews, the less Jews we have in the world, the less strong my nation is. And the less strong my nation is, the more chance my nation has of disappearing in 50, 100 years. I'm looking out for the future of my people. I'm not looking out for self-gratification. I'm not looking out for immediate gratification. I met this girl. Oh, she's not Jewish. Who cares? Let's get married. I'm not looking for immediate gratification. There's a lot more involved in marrying someone than just your immediate family and your and your happiness. There's also the future of your people when it comes to Jews. And trust me, people have tried to destroy us over the years, and we've been destroying ourselves a lot more than anyone's ever destroyed us by marrying outside of the faith.
You really feel that? You really feel that the Jewish community is actively trying to destroy itself?
Let's take a look at the numbers, Frank. After World War II, there were 15 million Jews in the world. Today, there are 15 million Jews in the world. We're talking 3 generations since World War II. Every generation is supposed to double the population, a minimum of double the population. You figure everyone has 2-3 kids. You're going to double the population every generation. What happened to all those Jews? In 3 generations, we're at the same number we were after World War II. Where did all those Jews go? There were no massacres between World War II and today. Where did all those Jews go? They assimilated into society. They're gone.
So you're really accusing the Jewish community of actively trying to hurt their own people.
I am saying that by intermarrying the Jewish community, by intermarrying the people who are intermarried, are hurting the Jewish community. I don't know if they're actively choosing to hurt the Jewish community, or it's just they don't have the education, they don't have the sense of Jewish pride, they don't have the commitment to the religion, they don't have the commitment to the people. Whatever it is, whatever is causing people to intermarry today, is destroying Judaism.
If you had to look back at your childhood, and you had the opportunity to go back in time and meet yourself as a child, so the adult Howie Silbiger meets little Howie Silbiger, what would you tell yourself?
In what aspect? Because it's a lot.
Anything. Some of the more important ones. What are some of the more important things that you wish that your future self would have come back in time, talked to you, and said, Howie, this is what you need to know about what's coming up?
Don't trust anyone. That's rule number 1. Don't trust anyone. People are self-serving. If they come out and they befriend you in a professional way. I'm not talking about like your friends in personal relationships, and professionally. Don't trust anyone, because they're always going to backstab you at the end. And it's been my experience throughout my journalistic career that, especially in journalism, if you put your trust in somebody and you trust and you work with somebody and you help them, they're always going to end up backstabbing you at the end. So that would be the first thing I'd tell myself as a little kid.
What are some of the experiences that happened in your life that taught you that?
I've been continuously backstabbed by people I've worked with. I'm not going to get into specifics because specifics are not fair to get into. But the truth is that it's happened to me more than once in my journalistic career, and it's a lesson you learn. You learn the lesson very quickly after it happens the first 3 times.
When you think about Howie Silbiger, the kid, what are some of the best childhood memories you have?
The best childhood memories I have. Concerning what? Once again, these are very open-ended questions, and I don't know where to go because I have a lot of childhood memories. So.
Best childhood memory with your family?
You put me on the spot here, and it's a tough question because there were a lot of very good memories of my family. My family was very good to me. I had a very good family. I don't know. Everything, really. I really have no issues with my family whatsoever. I love my family. My family loves me. we've had a very good family life, rich or poor. We've had a very good family life throughout the years. I can't think of anything that stands out.
Okay, what about your worst childhood memory? And this can be from school, from family, anything.
Well, my whole 5 years of high school were pretty bad.
What happened?
It was essentially a case of anti-Semitism, of Jew hating. I was the only person in my high school who wore a kippah. I was the only person in my high school who was a devoted Jew, and I learned what it is to be a Jew when it was beaten into me every single day.
Didn't you have the option of going to a Jewish high school?
No, not at that time. No.
Okay.
No. There were specific reasons I couldn't go to Jewish high school, and I didn't go to Jewish high school. I ended up going to a public school, and I learned my lesson. I learned my lesson that being a Jew is a tough thing, and being a Jew is you have to fight to be a Jew. I think that pretty much shaped me into my battles, into preserving Judaism, because I realized that it would have been much easier for me in high school to give up on my Judaism, to take the kippah off my head, to take off my tzitzis, and to walk through the school as everyone else, and to assimilate into society. It would have been much easier for me. And I would have had much less beatings than what I experienced for 5 years at that place.
I guess I'm just trying to find out here. Those 5 years probably shaped your view on the world, that it was not a safe place for Jews.
No, I think the Holocaust shaped my view on the world, that it's not a safe place for Jews. I think the Spanish Inquisition shaped my views on the world, and that it's not a safe place for Jews. I think the pogroms in Russia between 1933 and 1946 shaped my views on how the world's not safe for Jews. I think that the 5 Arab wars, or the 7 Arab wars against Israel, for no other reason besides the fact we don't want a Jewish state in the middle of the Middle East, shaped my view that the world's not a safe place for Jews. I don't think my high school experience really had much to do with that.
Then if your high school experience did have a driving force in your development, what would it be? In addition to everything you've already said.
My resolve. I don't back down. In high school I used to back down. They used to beat me and I used to back down. I went hiding in... I became the yearbook editor, or one of the photography editor, and I had my own dark room, and I went hiding in the dark room. I'd eat lunch in the dark room by myself, so they wouldn't throw pennies at me or throw food at me. So I think what I learned from high school, in the 5 years that I took beatings, and in the 5 years that I had pennies and stuff thrown at me, in the 5 years I took insults, what I learned at the end of high school was that, no, be proud of who you are, stand up. Be proud. No matter what happens to you, stay there and be proud of who you are. Hold your ground. And I've done that since high school. I've held my ground proudly. And, it's caused me problems, fine, but I've stood there and I've held my ground. You knew me in university, and it was obvious I was going to hold my ground. I wasn't backing down.
Yeah, that's one of the things I liked about you.
I don't back down.
And now you have your own radio show here on Radio Shalom. You still don't back down.
No.
And you still have a passion for protecting the Jewish way of life.
It's surprising so many years later.
Well, given how much you were beaten up, scorned, vilified, and now sometimes that's still happening from people who are Jewish.
The only difference is it's happening from the Jewish community now. Yeah, that's the difference, right? Before it was happening from Jew haters outside the Jewish community. Now it's happening from haters inside the Jewish community. So it's it gives me a different perspective on life, that's for sure.
Well, how does that affect you? How does that change your perspective on things?
In the world, we have there's a bunch of different classes of people, right? You have the people who are followers, you have the people who are leaders, and you have the people who are just there to detract from the message. They're just there to distract from the message. I really believe that the people who criticize me, the people who insult me, the people who come and they spit on me and they call me all sorts of names, that these people have the legitimate well-being of the Jewish community in mind. I honestly believe that they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything consciously to destroy Judaism or Jewish values or Jewish anything, right? They just don't have the education. They were raised in families that didn't have the Jewish values that I hold. They were raised in environments that weren't as Jewish as they should have been. There are many reasons. We go back to the Holocaust generation that gave up on God after the Holocaust. There's a lot of reasons why this happened. But there are a lot of people who were raised in environments that were hostile towards Judaism. And they're Jewish, and they know they're Jewish, and culturally they feel Jewish. They feel connected to the people, but not to the religion. And they were raised in environments that were hostile towards the religion of Judaism. So when these people attack me, it doesn't make me love them less. They're still my people. It doesn't make me angry at them. I understand. I understand that they don't understand what I'm doing. They don't understand what my mission is. They don't understand what my goal is. They don't understand what my motivation is. To them, this is alien. This is completely out of the scope of anything that they could ever imagine a Jew should be doing. And I could respect that. I understand it. I could respect it. But at the same time, I don't have to be like them. I could respect them. They could respect me. They may not agree with me. I may not agree with them. But there has to be a mutual respect. When that mutual respect is gone, and a lot of times that mutual respect is not there. When that mutual respect is gone, it upsets me. It doesn't anger me. It gets me upset. It gets me upset because then I realize. And the realization comes to me in waves. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it goes. But then you realize that for a certain segment of the population, a certain segment of the Jewish population, there's no hope. They're going to break off from Judaism eventually, or the next generation or the generation after that. They're going to disappear from Judaism. And that upsets me. It upsets me to no end. But it's the reality of life. It's happened through the generations. So this generation is no different than the last generation or the generation before that. So we know that a certain segment is going to break off. But it hurts to know that you're going to lose a certain amount of people that are part of your people.
If there were a few... Oh, we have a caller. Let's go to our phones. Hello, and what's your name, please?
My name is Esther.
Hi, Esther, and what's your question for Howie?
Okay, my question is, there's a tremendous amount of delegitimization going on, right? With Israel apartheid on the campus, all kinds of things happening, right?
Yeah.
And I was reading a very interesting article of Dory Gold's Hatred on Campus from the Jewish Standard. Too bad it wasn't passed around in enough organizations.
It's a very good magazine, the Jewish Standard.
I'm not talking about the magazine, I'm talking about the article.
Okay? But the magazine's a good magazine.
Right. I've never seen it before. But anyways, his article on hatred on campus is excellent. And there's a photo of a girl saying, Mom and Dad, guess what I'm learning in college? And it shows boycott Israel. Educate your kids before someone else does, and so on. Anyways, what I want to ask is the following. I'm very interested now in becoming, was living in Israel for a long time. I'm back in Montreal. I'm very interested in getting involved in supporting that guy out on Saint Denis or wherever he is with the Nayat Jews. Too bad he's on Shabbos is when they come and demonstrate. But I'm also interested in this delegitimization also happening, the hatred on campus. And I'm wondering, at one time I worked with silbiger, and we sort of went around to all the organizations to get them involved, to be able to go out on buses like we do today for Yom Ha'atzmaut. And I'm just wondering, how do you get to all the organizations without it taking a year?
All right, there are basically, on campus, there are basically two organizations that take care of pro-Israel activities on campus. One is
Have you shown them the film that's I'm wondering if they've shown them that film that he's talking about?
I'm sure. I don't know. I have no idea because I haven't been involved in campus in a long time. Right. But the two organizations are basically CJA, the Canada-Israel Public Affairs CJA PAC or CPAC or something like that. You can reach them through Federation. Just ask them for the pro-Israel lobby group. They deal with campus, and Hillel Montreal deals on campus.
Right, but what about the rest of the community? We don't get it. That delegitimization is that's happening on campus is not just on campus. We're being delegitimized everywhere. We don't have a capital city in Israel. that's recognized by the world. I'm just saying, we're being delegitimized all over the place. And I'm just wondering, how does one get to reach the organizations in a more, how should we say, systematic way than just starting the way we once did, one at a time?
Well, you have today you have emails, so just write a nice letter and copy it to everybody. All the organizations have websites, and all the websites have email addresses attached to them, and that's the best way to contact people.
Try with email.
Yeah, it's the quickest way to contact people. It's the best, because one email you could send to 500 people.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing I was interested in is finding out if there are any lawyers that are interested in protecting the guy out on St. Denis, because he's standing up for us.
Well, I'm sure there are a bunch of lawyers that were involved in that case. I think I remember that.
There are lawyers.
Yeah, there are a lot of people involved. That case has been going for 2 years already, so there's a lot of stuff.
But are there lawyers involved? Because I remember. Do you remember the balcony case with the Sukkah?
Yeah, the best people for the Saint Denis case, by the way, to contact is B'nai B'rith Canada.
B'nai B'rith is handling that?
They're handling the Saint Denis case, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Right, bye.
All right, Frank, we have about 3 minutes left, so you have one last question.
Looking towards the future, what would you say is your absolute future hope for you and the Jewish community?
For me, I hope that, and honestly, this is the truth. I know it sounds like a cop-out, but it's actually the truth. I really hope that I could sit here, turn on the radio microphone here, and not have anything to talk about. This is really what I hope. I really hope that there are no issues in the community that I have to come and expose, and I wish there were no scandals or issues in the community that I'd have to talk about. Honestly, I really wish that. That's my wish for the community. I wish they would turn back towards tradition. I wish that they would go back to observing traditional Judaism.
And with that, we have another caller, and we're going to go right to the phones.
Hi, I was just listening to your interviewer and how he seemed to be very critical of it, but I just want to mention the name of Socrates. He stood on principle, and for all these hundreds of centuries, all these many centuries, he's been revered all over the world for his courage and his integrity. So whether or not I'm not Jewish, but I just happened to catch your program, and I think you're a very brave and honest man, and don't compromise principle. Just once more, I want to remind you, for your own satisfaction and your interviewer, to think about Socrates' example, who, as I say, is revered all down through the centuries for courage and integrity and standing by principle.
Thank you so much for calling. Appreciate it.
You're a very brave man.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I think that's very well said, Howie.
Yeah, I didn't even think about Socrates. But thank you.
I think the analogy stands.
Frank, I want to thank you for coming in and doing this. I know this is the first interview actually that anyone's actually interviewed me about me, and I appreciate you doing it. I've known you a long time, for disclosure, I've known you a really long time.
We've known each other since the early 90s, actually.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming in here and taking time out of your Sunday to come and do this interview. Thank you so much.
Always my pleasure, Howie. Good luck.
Frank Kermit, thank you so much again. We'll take a little break. You're listening to the Howie Silbiger Show on 1650 AM CJRS Radio, Charlotte, Montreal. We're heard around the world on the True Talk Radio Network. We'll be right back.
If you need help with your relationships, well, my buddy Frank here has got some tips. Just go to franktalks.com. His advice is better than your mom's, 'cause he knows what you are going through. Frank has been there too, so log on to franktalks.com, to franktalks.com.
Frank
Need help with love, sex, dating, or relationship issues? Help from Frank Kermit, the best-selling author and Canada's most international relationship coach, is only a click away at franktalks.com.